The following special episode of Addressing Gettysburg is brought to you without commercial interruption by our Patreon page. Just go to patreon.com/addressinggettysburg so you can help support the show and keep it going and growing. Just go to patreon.com/addressinggettysburg and help us help you. That's patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. And we thank you in advance. Now on with the show.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg, the 160th anniversary episode of the Battle of Brandy Station. It's kicking off our anniversary shows this year for the 160th of the Battle of Gettysburg, which is what we care about most. But there are smaller battles along the way that are important and fun to learn about. And so this year we're starting off with Brandy Station. We are sitting on top of Fleetwood Hill. And you might hear the sound of airplanes throughout. There is a airport not too far from here. And so all these prop planes have been going all day. But bear with us. There's nothing I can do about that. So you just have to get over yourselves. All right. So sitting with us here today are three guides from the Culpeper Battlefield Tours company. You can actually get tours of Brandy Station, and you know all three of these people because two of them are Gettysburg guides, and one of them is our very own beloved Six Questions Lentz. And so, of course, I said him first. So, hello, Six Questions.
Hello.
Today, you are not questioner. You are not guy hanging out in the studio. You are a guest. You are a guide here.
Well, to be fair, I did offer to send in 6 questions to myself.
You did.
Yeah.
Yes. And thank God you didn't. So you've been a guide here now since what, May of 2022?
Yes.
And so by the time the audience is hearing this, we'll be a year.
Just over a year.
Yeah. And so by the time a year comes, let's just pretend you're at a year. How many tours have you done so far?
Hopefully, I'd say maybe a dozen to 2 dozen.
A dozen to 2 dozen.
Pretty good.
Okay, and you're at about a half a dozen now, aren't you?
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Just shy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And along with Mike, to my left here, both politically and geographically, is Chris Army.
If you think that's my political position, we haven't spent much time together.
Chris,
we didn't come here to talk about that.
No, we're not talking about politics now.
Good. This will, be fun.
Yes, it will be fun. We've had fun all day today.
Yes.
We took a tour with Bud Hall.
Bud is the premier preservationist of this battlefield, as well as the premier historian of the battlefield.
Gotcha. Okay.
And a good friend.
We took a tour with him all day. All morning, I should say, and it was fantastic because I've been down here once when I was a little kid, and it wasn't quite as preserved as it is today.
Absolutely.
And so it was really cool to go to all these places. And I was telling Mike in the car, I played this game, Scourge of War, Gettysburg. It's Gettysburg Scourge of War, and they have a couple of other battles that they do, like Antietam, and Brandy Station is one of them. And so I've played that a bunch of times, and I wanted to orient myself so that
Which side were you on when you played the game?
Well, I usually go Union.
Yeah? So how'd you do?
I always win.
In Scourge of War, you won?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because what I do is I don't use... So you could choose the order of battle. Mm-hmm. And so you could choose from all of the orders of battle. So the Gettysburg, Antietam, or whatever. Or Chancellorsville is another one. So I never actually used the Brandy Station order of battle.
I was going to say, did you bring all 93,000
Yes.
Union men here against 10,000 Confederate cavalry?
No. You use... If you choose the Gettysburg order of battle, then both sides are Gettysburg. Right? So, it's a cool game. But the game helps me orient in my head where I am, because I relate it to what it looks like on the game map. And, so it was pretty cool to do this, and we had a great time with that. And then also, of course, with us is Tracy Baer. You know Tracy Baer from many episodes on Addressing Gettysburg as well when we talk about Gettysburg. Hello, Tracy. How are you?
I am fine, Matt. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so let's talk about the Battle of Brandy Station. First of all, why does a battle occur here at Brandy Station? What's going on that makes the armies meet?
Well, how about I kind of get started, and I'll let our color commentary horsemen comment
Sure.
about? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the battle takes place on June 9th, 1863, and what's been happening after the Battle of Chancellorsville is much of the Union Army is over in Fredericksburg, and Joseph Hooker he has learned that Confederate cavalry is somewhere around Culpeper, and he believes that J.E.B. Stuart is going to make another run around the Union Army, which just kind of ticks Hooker off as far as thinking that.
Right.
So he wants to have his cavalry troops go into Culpeper and disperse whatever Jeb's thinking. Let's disperse them.
Yes.
And so he's going to have his new cavalry commander, Alfred Pleasonton, come up with a plan. And the plan is to use 2 fords. You know the names of these fords are pretty well known. Beverly Ford and Kelly's Ford. He's going to have 2 divisions cross early in the morning of June 9th and meet up somewhere here around Brandy Station and disperse the Confederate cavalry. Those are the orders.
All right. And so, I mean, Stuart, being a competent commander, clearly has got pickets out in every direction to make sure this that he doesn't get surprised, right?
You might think so, but
what? He doesn't?
Kind of digging into it a little bit, Stuart has just come off of one of his many grand reviews.
Yes.
Remember, he has a series of these reviews of his now consolidated Confederate cavalry, and he is really proud of doing these reviews, but the boss hasn't been here. And pretty soon Robert E. Lee shows up, and now he wants to do a review for the boss. And of course Robert E. Lee puts a couple of parameters around this review because he doesn't want to tire out the horse flesh and he doesn't want to waste ammunition, which probably bummed Stuart out a little bit because the previous ones just had women swimming all over the place whenever they would ride up against the cannons. And Stuart, as it was said, was in all his glory.
Right.
For these grand reviews. So the grand reviews had pretty much just taken place. All of the Confederate Cavaliers, I think they're probably tired by now of shining everything up and getting ready for these reviews. But the gist of what's going on is Robert E. Lee is about to make his move north, and so the cavalry is more or less in this area around Brandy Station, more or less kind of keeping watch on things as the Confederate Army is going to start to head west and get up into the Shenandoah, head north. And so you would think that with all the fords along the Rappahannock River, that Confederates would place pickets across the river, but they do not. They do have some pickets on this side of the river, but it doesn't really seem like J.E.B. Stuart's all that worried.
Interesting.
And it seems as also to me, using a football analogy, which, Matt, you won't get, but it seems like that wide receiver that's coming over the middle of the field,
Absolutely.
Right? And the pass is being thrown to him. Stuart, some receivers in that instance will drop the ball because they're thinking about the next step that they're about to take instead of focusing on catching the ball in the first place. Stuart, after the grand review, is given his initial instructions to prepare his movements north to screen the movements of Ewell's Corps as it's heading into the Shenandoah Valley towards Winchester. And those movements are to begin on June 9th. Over in some areas, Beverly Ford is one of the fords that's going to be used.
And continuing with your analogy, had he maybe taken some precautions against surprise, then he would have been able to score that home run. So,
and get 2 points, right?
yeah, exactly. And maybe try for a 3-pointer.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead, Trace.
And before we get too far into it, I would like to just, I'm certain most of your listeners are pretty well versed in the Battle of Gettysburg. So this battle, as we mentioned, kicks off the Gettysburg campaign.
Right.
So you will be hearing quite a few names that are familiar to Gettysburg. And you're going to hear a few that aren't familiar to Gettysburg. And these are men who are casualties during this battle. So let's think about that as we go on towards Gettysburg. What the ramifications of losing these men, losing these officers, losing these commanders in this battle ultimately are going to have 3 weeks from now when the Gettysburg battle begins.
So maybe we should then start with the beginning of the Battle of Brandy Station, because we're going to lose one of those. We're going to get one of those casualties
pretty
early on.
Yeah,
right, and he was kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
Buford really liked this guy.
he did.
So start the battle off then.
Okay, so General John Buford is leading the right wing of the Union forces that will be crossing at Beverly Ford. He will have 3 brigades with him under the first under Benjamin Franklin Davis, better known as Grimes Davis.
Where does he get that name?
He was dirty. Chris, do you know where he gets that name?
I mean, how can I top that?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I always assumed it was that. Like, he was a dirty guy, and they always called him Grimes.
Grimy.
What?
Elon Musk's baby mama?
The hell are you talking about?
Where are we going
Wow.
now?
Who's
We've
Elon
reached-
Musk's baby mama?
We've reached deep into the.
Man.
And it took all of 5 minutes for the train to come off.
Yeah.
I think the train did a flip over, not only just come off the track.
Thank God we didn't do this with Bud. See?
I know.
We would have been wasting his time.
I'm curious how we're going to tie Elon Musk into this battle.
Yeah.
I don't know. Joe just did it, though.
Yeah. Thank
So
you, Joe.
his baby mama's last name is Grimes. Is that her first name is Grimes? Grimes is her first name.
Grimes, it's like a share. She's
Oh, she. That's disgusting. Okay.
You just looked that up on the internet, didn't you? Or is that useless knowledge floating around your head?
Right.
Wow.
That's a
Wow.
Navy man.
Anyway.
All right. So go.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tracy. Yes.
Yeah.
10 minutes ago.
Okay. So another brigade will be under Thomas Devon.
Right.
We know him
We know
from
him.
the first day at Gettysburg. And then, is it Charles Whiting?
Yep.
Charles Whiting will be leading the reserve brigade. So Buford has 3 brigades crossing at Beverly Ford, and about 8 miles downriver, down the Rappahannock at Kelly's Ford, will be the left wing under another familiar Gettysburg name, David McMurtry Gregg. And Gregg will have Judson Kilpatrick. No. Edit that out.
Okay. I'm going to actually have to listen to this while I
I was
edit
going
it
to say,
now.
we don't usually edit, do we? We go forth with mistakes and everything.
All right. So the reserve brigade is where you got tripped up.
No.
No.
Gregg's brigade.
Oh, Greg.
Yeah, Greg.
Oh, who does Greg have with him?
Greg's division.
Kilpatrick is one of his, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kilpatrick
Yeah, 3rd
and
Division.
Percy Wyndham.
Percy Wyndham.
Percy Wyndham.
And then, of course, you have Alfred Dufier's
Yeah.
division.
And
Duffier is how you say it?
with J. Irvin Gregg.
Yeah.
Who was?
I don't know his first name. He's at
What was the last name?
Desus Nola.
Desus Luigi.
Luigi.
Our favorite
Desus
Italian.
Nola.
Yeah.
I never
He's going to get
heard
Medal
of
of Honor later for, I think, Aldi. But
Okay, are we ready?
All right. So yeah.
So David McMurtry Gregg will be crossing with the left wing of the Union forces at Kelly's Ford, and he will have the 2nd Division under Desus Nola and J. Irvin Gregg, the 3rd Division under Judson Kilpatrick and Percy Wyndham, along with an infantry brigade under David Russell, and they will cross again a little behind in time from Buford. Now, I failed to mention Buford does have some infantry with him as well.
I was just going to ask you if you didn't say that. So this is known as a cavalry battle,
Yes.
but there were infantry units. What was it? Each wing had one brigade?
It was kind of a hybrid. It was a mashup of men, and as Mike pointed out earlier today, all but one Union Corps that we know of at Gettysburg is represented. The 5th Corps is not represented in this infantry that takes part here at Brandy Station.
So the infantry, in other words, each
There's-
brigade, it's not like taking a
there's
brigade
regiments
as it is.
That's
It's
right.
it's like a, what would they call it, a demi-brigade? Or what's it when you take them from...
Well, I don't know what you would call it in military terms, but it's kind
Then
of
why
like
were you laughing?
Well, for me, I don't know what the...
He just got the home run reference.
Yes, I'm that far behind here.
Okay.
This is kind of a grab bag of regiments. They're not typically brigaded with each other, and they're under commanders that they're not too familiar with.
Okay.
So it's an interesting setup. It's an interesting alignment.
Okay.
And also shows that, again, under Hooker, the cavalry corps is a lot more aggressive than it had been under his predecessors.
Mm-hmm.
This infantry going along with him is not meant to be a scalpel. It's meant to be a sledgehammer. This is going to destroy and disperse Stuart to prevent this raid in its incipiency. So these regiments he selected are actually under very competent, very capable regimental commanders, and are some of the best in the Army of the Potomac. You've got the 2nd Wisconsin, 7th Wisconsin in there. You've got old Edward Cross with the 5th New Hampshire there as well. That's going in with Russell. Plus you have 2nd Massachusetts under Mudge for you Gettysburg students out there, going in with Ames with Buford's wings. So these infantry brigades are a collection of different regiments that have never really fought together before.
Right, okay.
So the overall plan here of Pleasonton, send these 2 wings across the Rappahannock, have them converge on close to Brandy Station, and then proceed to Culpeper, unaware of the fact that there's Confederate troops standing in the way.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In addition to that, if you do a little map work on it, you'll quickly find out that the cross from Beverly Ford is pretty much straight on. But crossing from Kelly's Ford and working your way over to Brandy Station is a much farther route.
And that's what Greg has to do.
That's what Greg has to do with his side of the attack. And there's no compensation made for that. There's to launch the attacks at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some other reasons that Greg will end up getting delayed. But from the first step off of this fight, Greg already has much farther to go to be there at the same time that Buford should be getting there.
Right. The idea being that they're supposed to both sandwich Stuart if they could get there at the same time, but they're not obviously going to be able to do that.
They're thinking, because they haven't done any reconnaissance. Neither side has done any reconnaissance on this, as you alluded to earlier.
Yeah.
Their thinking is they're not going to run into any problems before they connect. So it's a big surprise when they do run into problems on the right side of the Union line. And, of course, there's all sorts of problems on the left side of the Union line. So it's not a matter of just going across and meeting up, with one side having to go farther than the other.
Yeah.
It's the fact that they're going to run into, Confederates all throughout this, slowing them down even more.
Because the Confederates, Stuart's cavalry is not all just sitting in one area. They're spread out over miles, correct?
Yes.
So each brigade is in a different area. What was the purpose of that?
Well, what is Robert E. Lee prepared to do at this point? What has he already kicked off?
Moving into the valley to go up to Pennsylvania.
So Jeb Stuart essentially is guarding the fords on the Hazel and the Rappahannock in preparation to screen those movements.
Okay.
So he is spread out with brigades various places along these 2 rivers, just watching them, with his headquarters essentially close to the center,
right,
and also his artillery not far off of Beverly Ford, poised to move as well.
Do me a favor. I'm sorry, real quick. When you talk, just make sure the mic is pointed at your mouth.
Okay.
Yeah, just point it. Yeah, you don't have to have it right up there if you don't want to, but yeah, just have it pointed at your mouth. Okay.
I was just going to say, so to continue with a sports analogy.
Thank you.
I'm here for this. Let's go.
Stuart has his zone defense going.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
How about that? Which is very important in baseball, as you know.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Is that a sports analogy though? Because defense is part of the military, so
Well, sure.
I was waiting for
That's all I got.
I was waiting for a real good sports analogy that I could mangle somehow, and Yeah. But all right, Chris, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
That's
all
all
right. So Stuart's men are scattered all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
but strategically so. They're not just randomly thrown anywhere,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah, there's
That's
a
right.
strategy to why they are where they are. Buford's men, they cross over. Now let's get back to Grimes Davis. We didn't get to him getting killed yet. So Buford's men cross at which ford?
Beverly Ford.
Beverly Ford. And do they surprise the Confederates? What is it that makes it so that the Confederates don't even realize they're there until...
Well, there
they're
are
right
a
in front
few Confederate pickets down close to the ford, and it's early in the morning, bit of fog, so that inhibits some of the visibility. And as the Union soldiers approach the ford, and I love Bud Hall's description of the horses' ears flopping.
Yeah.
The horses can hear. You know, they can hear the horses on the other side. And this is one of the wonderful things about having the ability to come out here with Bud, because you learn something new every day. I was unaware of the breached dam. And
I'd
all the
never heard
water,
that,
all the
yeah.
noise coming across from that water spilling over that dam, also deafening, the sounds of the soldiers approaching and crossing the river. That's a big thing to me.
To me, that was it.
Yeah,
That,
yeah.
And when he said that, it made me go back to my point that I always try to bring up in these shows, is that the smallest, most mundane, thing that you wouldn't even think would matter sometimes makes all the difference.
Yeah.
That breached dam causing the water to make all that noise basically deafens the Confederate pickets. So
Yes.
they can't hear horses nynnying as they're approaching on the road, or the hooves or whatever they might hear because of the noise of that.
That's right.
And you pointed out before the horses' ears, and what that was,
They would
that
twitch because they could hear.
the horses could hear better than the humans.
That's right.
And so the humans who pay attention to the signs their horses give them know, well, wait a second, his ears just pointed in front. What's going on over there?
Yeah, and that's that rider having that relationship
Yeah.
with the horse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they were all of a sudden aware.
Yep.
And as they would cross the river, the pickets, the Confederate pickets, then they're startled, they're alarmed, and the first thing that they need to do is make everybody else aware.
Yes.
So they would fire the revolver in the air a couple of times. That's warning shots before starting to fire at the approaching Union soldiers.
So that alerts their own men and, of course, the enemy. And so how quickly do the Confederates get themselves together to...
Chris, how many Confederates? About 40 down there along the
Yeah.
river?
Yeah, somewhere around 40, and these are men, that've been on picket duty in and around that area. Those that are not are basically just sleeping by their horses. There's different accounts of the picket pins being right in the ground, and once they're alerted, many of the men, they're just going to jump on their horses. Some of them not even having time to saddle them if they had taken the saddles off and
Or get
ride
dressed.
to this emergency. Yeah, I mean, there's guys in their
Long
johns and barefooted,
Yeah.
just jumping on the horse to go respond to
Yeah,
this.
just like strap on your pistol belt and go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so quickly then the Confederate forces start to head towards the ford? Is that as quickly as they can, I guess?
Well, they're not necessarily heading towards the ford as much as they're trying to figure out what's going on.
Okay.
All right, and gunshots are flying from each direction,
Okay.
and the Union forces begin to cross, and as they do, rather than stay in that efficient line of march that they probably had hoped to do right up Beverly Ford Road, now they're starting to spread out. And Grimes Davis, as he crosses, wasn't it him that gave the order to advance?
Charge his foragers.
Charge his
Foragers,
foragers.
yeah. Yep.
And that simply means
Yep.
leave that efficient column
Yep.
of march, spread out, and now they're moving, side by side
Yeah.
instead of column.
I had never heard that term until today, charge as foragers.
As foragers.
Yeah.
Well, we know you're going to go home and look that up in your cavalry manual.
Absolutely.
And if you can't find yours, I'm sure Eric will loan you his.
Eric's got 4 copies.
Yes.
He says it's so important I have 4 copies just in case someone needs to borrow it.
Right. Probably one in every room of his house,
That's
I would
right.
imagine.
That's right, he does.
Yeah.
And the bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a huge order that is just given there by Grimes Davis. because what it does is allows more to come over the ford instead of being in that compact formation. Now they're allowing to spread themselves out, and more troopers can come over the ford minute by minute, and this will make a huge difference with what happens to him later here.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Now, in this, as they're coming up the Beverly Ford Road, and they're dispersing as foragers, as they're going into those fights with the skirmishers. There's a lieutenant, I believe he was, Henry Cutler, who will be shot through the throat, thus becoming the first casualty of the Gettysburg campaign. And Henry Cutler was from Avon, New York, is buried up there. But you now have the first casualty of the Gettysburg campaign. But the charge is coming. I mean, they are going up the road.
Yeah, and so they're charging, and Grimes Davis is at the head of the charge.
Yes, and I might add that who he is facing, guarding this fort, is primarily Grumble Jones' brigade.
Yes,
mostly Virginians. So these men are now trying to make the men behind them. These are just the pickets, the Confederate pickets. So they're trying to make the men behind them aware of what's going on. And as they do that, Grimes Davis begins leading his charge up the road. Now, Davis himself on the road, charging ahead, and as he proceeds, brave foolishness, whatever you want to call it, he gets tangled with some Confederates. And Davis will take a swing at one, very close. And the Confederate soldier, what's his name, Chris?
Robert Owen Allen.
Robert Owen Allen will kind of duck down close to the horse's neck, horse's mane, in order to avoid that slash. And as he does, he has his revolver and point blank, more or less, shoots Davis in the head and kills him immediately.
Yeah, it's almost like out of a movie, that scene,
isn't it?
Right, the way the horsemanship and the whole quick thinking and boom, right in the head.
Yeah. But so now Buford has lost a trusted friend, a great leader, and think about, again, going to Gettysburg. Think about the repercussions of losing a leader.
Yeah. Who takes over for Davis?
Who does?
It's not Gamble?
I think it might be Devin.
Or that's
Devin. I think it is Devin.
Yeah, because Buford's commanding the entire wing, so Devin moves up to command the division.
Right.
Because Davis was commanding the division at that time.
So Davis is the division commander?
Acting division commander.
Acting division commander in this charge? Well, that's silly.
Coming over the ford.
That's silly for him to have been up there then, especially
Well,
as
you
a
do what you
division
know how to
commander.
do.
I guess so. But okay, so he gets killed. But what's going on behind the Confederate lines at this point? Are they aware of all this, or is it too far away to hear the gunshots, or what?
They can hear it, and as I alluded to earlier, Robert Beckham's horse artillery, aren't far, and they are alerted to this. So they begin to saddle up, limber up, and pull those guns back out of harm's way until they can find a better platform to employ that artillery.
And I think the greatest thing aiding them right now is the fact that the Union cavalry doesn't quite know that they're there yet.
Yeah,
if the Union cavalry knew they were there, they would have been in real trouble because they're not too far away. Union cavalry's not too far away from them. The only thing standing between that artillery are those skirmishers, and then later the 6th and 7th Virginia coming up.
So you're talking about at the church, the artillery at the church?
Well, eventually. Yes, we'll get there.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, but the circle that we parked at earlier, which is basically the first stop where we do interpretation of this.
Okay.
During the night, that circle is occupied by a lot of this artillery.
Got it. Okay.
They're getting ready to cross the Rappahannock River the next day.
Okay.
So there they are thinking, next day we get up, we're going to cross the river and head on.
Got it. Okay.
So you got to get that artillery out of there before it's captured.
Sure. Right, because they're not in line ready to fire. They're parked.
And,
yeah.
and even in some cases, the horses are unharnessed, grazing in the fields.
Right. So you're
they
not
have
even
to
ready
harness
to
the
move.
horses and get them out of there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they're taken by surprise, then, I guess is the point we're trying to make here, right? All right. So how does the battle progress then?
So as they hurry to limber up, that artillery and bring it back to what will end up being the St. James line, there's one battery, Hart's Battery, South Carolinians. They're up at Gettysburg. It's their job with pretty much one gun to hold off the charging Union forces. And so they're firing canister down the road as the rest of the artillery line is falling back.
Okay.
And the Beverly Ford Road, we must state, is not a straight road. It bends. And so, yeah, it's one of those cases where if you're coming around a bend and you get hit by canister fire, that's going to cause you to pause a little bit.
Yes.
You're going to have a bad day, Matt.
Right. Takes you by surprise. So back then, like if you were to come here today, there's a lot of trees everywhere. But was it a wooded area back then?
It was pretty wide open. It was a lot of the area was known as the Cunningham Farm, active farm, and wide open spaces. And in fact, remained pretty wide open up until the latter part of the last decade. And the trees have kind of taken over now. So we do have the inability to see some of the sight lines even from the high prominence that we're on today, known as Buford's Knoll,
right?
Where you get a pretty good view of the overall battlefield, but the trees have filled in, and
you're looking at treetops everywhere.
We know the story, right? Trees fill in these areas, and it's hard to interpret, but we can still make out some of the ridge lines and whatnot that were important.
The Cunningham farm was about 1,400 acres of wheat and tobacco. So it's not high corn either. You can still, when you're on a horse, you can see over it.
Right. All right. So does that? So the woods that so Davis is coming over, pushing up the road. Whoever's behind them is going to be pushing up as well, I'm sure. But that road goes into woods, right? Aren't there woods on either side of the road, or is that just now?
I believe it's pretty much now. I think it was.
Okay.
There may have been. There may have been some orchards, and the orchards were typically for the farms, and they're closer to the farm buildings themselves. But as far as big woodlots, I don't know that there were any like we have today.
There was a tree line, or at least some trees near the field that leads up to St. James.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was that, but it's not nearly as forested or wooded as it is today.
Right. Not dense woods.
No, not even remotely.
Okay. All right. So would like if somebody back at St. James, would they have been able to see everything happening on the other side of those woods, or probably not?
I don't believe they would have seen. They might have seen a few things, but not clear through the woods.
But they definitely would have heard it.
They could hear.
They would have heard it.
Yeah. You've seen the smoke and heard it.
Yes.
Right. All right. So things that how hard is it for them to push it back to St. James Church? How hard is it for the Union Army to do that? Do they have a hard time? Is it a hard fight getting down the road to St. James?
Well, I think that the next step is once the Confederates are falling back, it's the idea okay, you got a fallen commander when Grimes Davis goes down. It takes a little time for to institute the new commander, and so then when they push forward, now the push forward is going to be against this gun line, which is also supported by Grumble Jones' men. And on the eastern side, you will also have Wade Hampton's men coming up as well.
Okay.
Okay, so the Confederates are responding to this, over the course of the next, what would you say, maybe hour or so, as things are developed and continuing to increase.
Right.
And now, it comes time to attack that gun line.
So the Confederates are concentrating towards where the Union
St. James Church.
Church.
Yeah, that ridge line kind of that it's more or less a ridge line that the
Kind of an
G house is on.
east-west
Yeah,
ridge
yeah.
line there.
That goes from the G house, which is now on land that's owned by the airport, all the way out to St. James Church, and then around that curve of the road there, which is the Green Farm, the Daniel Green Farm at the time.
Okay. And Stuart, go ahead.
I might add that coming over the river, you do have an option. There's not just the Beverly Ford Road. There was another road
Yes.
cutting off to the right.
Mm-hmm.
And General Buford is actually going to head up that direction. And he's going to gain the high ground that we were on this morning that Bud has dubbed Buford's Knoll.
Buford's Knoll, yeah.
And from there, again, keep in mind what we saw today is not what we would have seen 160 years ago. We would have been able to see, just like John Buford was able to see, the attacks progressing off to his left.
Yeah.
Okay, so he was gaining the high ground of that portion of the battlefield, and he was able to see what's going on. He wasn't involved with the fight down where Davis was. He has moved his headquarters in the saddle, if you will, to that high ground.
Right.
So that Union line is beginning to stretch out.
Right, okay.
It's not just limited to heading up the road towards the St. James Church. It's starting to spread out.
Now, my knowledge of the layout of everything here is not as good as it is in Gettysburg. So, back to the ford. I cross the ford. Soon after, I could take a road that goes to the left, or I could go straight. Is that right?
Straight or to the right.
Right, or to the
Straight
right.
or to the right?
To the right,
Okay,
yes.
got it. So now I'm... Should have gone around to the right. So, okay. So, left or to the right.
I just wanted to hear his good impression.
If I'm flipping and I'm standing at St. James Church,
Yes.
okay, and I'm looking out across the field where the Union is coming towards me,
Yes.
the road that's to my left coming out of the woods is which road?
If you're at St. James Church, the road to the left is the
My left front.
your left front. That goes in front of the Green Farm.
Okay.
Okay, that's going to come right in front of St. James.
What is that,
Church.
Chris?
Yes.
Is that the old Virginia Road? What was that?
Let me see if I can get an exact road name on that for you. It's
These roads
it's
are
called
are,
Greens Mill Road.
Greens Mill Road.
These
okay.
roads are historic.
Greens
Yeah.
had a mill, and this was his road.
Is that how they came up with that
I don't know
name?
if that's true or not, but sure sounds good.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
If it's not, it should be.
Yeah, yeah.
And then what's the name of the other road then? Now, if I'm looking again, same thing to my right front that we came in on.
Beverly
That's the
Ford Road.
That's
Road.
Beverly Ford
Yeah.
Road. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so you got Union to the left of me, Union to the right of me, stuck in the middle with you at St. James Church, Matt.
Yes, all right. Very good. So and they're coming up both those
Another
roads?
sports
The
analogy.
Yankees? No, now music I get.
Well, the Green Mill Road is actually going to be largely occupied by Confederates,
Right.
Okay.
including the artillery and some of Grumble Jones's men.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
also going back to your question of why is it taking them some time to get down the Beverly Ford Road, you're not only losing Colonel Davis, but you also lost the commander of the 8th Illinois, Captain Alpheus Clark. And so, but 8th Illinois, for you Gettysburg fans, opened the battle
Yeah.
of First Day, and they are considered by one Confederate soldier called them the finest volunteer Federal cavalry regiment in the service. Now, I don't know if that's a compliment or a backhanded compliment.
Yeah, right. Right.
But the reality is, what helps the Union advance after Davis is killed is that you have some good commands still coming down the road, and they still keep coming over the ford. So, but it's going to take them some time because they didn't expect this fight.
Right.
They were not expecting this at all. So it's going to take them some time to keep moving forward.
Okay.
And while they are trying to organize and keep moving forward, news is getting out to other Confederate commands. Rooney Lee, son of Robert E., has been guarding Welford's Ford, which is on the Hazel. So he's some distance from this fight, but again, you can hear it.
Right.
And he begins to do that old saying of moving towards the guns. So he will move from Welford's Ford across U Ridge towards the sounds of the guns, down into a valley between U Ridge and Buford's Knoll.
Okay.
And down there in that valley is a stone wall. And he will dismount his troops behind that stone wall in anticipation of an attack. So the battle's beginning to take on a couple of different facets here, a couple of different places.
Okay.
Now, at the same time, Matt, one of the things that you do have going on is Alfred Duffier has arrived at Kelly's Ford. They do cross, but as they continue towards Stevensburg, which is where they're going to turn and turn and head this way eventually on Fleetwood Hill, you have some Confederates that are going to respond and go out that way, including Wade Hampton's brother, Lieutenant Colonel Frank Hampton, who will be mortally wounded here during that fight later on. Gregg, he's finally crossed Kelly's Ford. Duffier, on his way to Stevensburg, gets lost. Confederate Commander Beverly Robertson is going to approach it and block what he thinks is the entire Union portion that's crossing over there, but it's only part of it.
Okay.
And pretty much, if I recall, not going to engage very much the whole day. So Stuart loses those troops to doing basically
nothing. Just watching.
Nothing. Yeah. But some of the Union boys are going to continue on towards Stevensburg, where they will meet up with just enough of the Confederate troops over there to slow them down. And all this is happening concurrently.
Right. So let's just go to here, Fleetwood Hill, for a moment, because this is Stuart's headquarters is up here, right?
Yes.
Right.
Lovely hill. Perfect place to make
Lovely
a camp.
ground.
Lovely ground. It's got the best damn ground around. And when he starts getting word that the Yankees are crossing at Beverly, does he believe it? Does he care? What's his attitude during this battle, at least in the early stages of it?
What's one of your favorite quotes that Grumble Jones has, Chris?
Where he basically says, he sends a message to Stuart that, hey, we're getting hit and they're coming, coming at us, and Stuart basically, says something about going over there and seeing what the
fuss is all about.
Fuss is all about, but he basically tells Grumble. No, that's a little bit later on in the battle. He basically tells Grumble Jones, you watch your front and I'll watch mine.
I'll watch the rear.
Yeah, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Grumble Jones responds with, so he thinks they ain't coming, eh?
Yeah.
And
he'll soon find out.
He'll soon find out.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful dramatization of the entire Battle of Brandy Station on our second narrative episode. If you want to go back and find that, ladies and gentlemen, with that exchange in there.
Oh,
yeah. Because I thought it was funny. Go ahead.
And if you read Heros von Bork's account of the Battle of Brandy Station, it's one that he wrote with Scheibert there, that basically this is the hotel wake-up call you really didn't want to have here on Fleetwood Hill. This is Stuart's headquarters. When the firing starts, and it really starts in earnest, it's all commotion. Men are going in every which direction because Stuart needs to go out there and see for himself what's going on.
Right.
So it really is an interesting thing. His description of that is people are just running around, getting on their horses, and trying to get out as quickly as they possibly can to find out what's going on.
Figure out what's going on. So Stuart actually leaves Fleetwood Hill to go see, right?
Yeah.
And who's left up here?
Henry B. McClellan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's he?
So he's on Stuart's staff, and he's here with all the headquarters stuff.
So just him.
Yeah. And Henry B. McClellan, here's the aggressive McClellan and family. Apparently all the genes got to him.
Yeah, he's George's cousin?
He's George's first cousin.
Yeah.
George McClellan's first cousin. Born in Philadelphia. Moved to Virginia prior to the war and was a teacher. And then joined up with the 3rd Virginia Cavalry.
But as you know, Matt, the Yankees got all the smart ones.
That's right. Look where it got them.
And if you ever see a great a picture of Henry McClellan, he's got a great tie. I mean, that's a magnificent tie.
Yes,
Just
yes.
look it up.
Well, those McClellan boys were known for their ties.
They're dapper.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let me see if I can find
So,
that.
okay, while you're looking, I'll continue here with the. So Stuart goes to where? St. James Church?
He's heading out
He's
in
in
that
that
direction.
line, yeah.
Yes,
He goes out
the
there.
sound of the guns. Yeah.
And he brings with him some staff, right? And what are they doing? Oh, yeah, look at that tie.
huh?
Wow, look at him.
Man.
Jesus.
Foppery.
That's that. You know what that is? That tie is the same. It's like Percy Wyndham's mustache. he
shifted
did a
down.
he did a. It's called a Wyndham knot.
So now Tracy, we need a instead
You
of
need to get a little tie on a stick.
yeah, tie on that
When
stick.
you're talking about McClellan, that's.
Yeah, you might
But
want
it's
to
the same
include the
shape
audience
as his
into.
mustache. Yeah, I know, folks. You're going to have to look up a picture of Henry B. McClellan and then also Percy Wyndham and look at McClellan's tie and Wyndham's mustache.
But Henry McClellan's only recently been in that position as being an adjutant to Stuart, because Stuart's previous adjutant was lost at Chancellorsville.
Okay.
So this is kind of a new spot for him to be in.
But he does a pretty good job, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Does an excellent job.
Because what happens to him up here? What does he notice? And what is the only
Well,
thing he? Or is that later?
Yeah, let's.
Okay, all right.
yeah,
all right.
let's-
Sorry,
let's-
sorry. I'm
let's
jumping around.
Put that on the shelf. for
Okay,
right
put it
now,
on the
for a
shelf.
few
Don't let me
minutes.
forget that
That's
it's
on
the
the
shelf.
second DVD of the Battle of Brandy
Yeah,
Yeah.
flip it over.
Yeah.
All right. So where do we leave off then?
So St. James.
St. James Church. What's the staff doing while?
The staff?
While Stuart's over there.
Well, the staff is going with Stuart, except for McClellan and
McClellan.
a handful of orderlies
Right.
that are going to be here.
No, but I'm saying when they're over there at St. James Church
Yes.
by Grumble Jones's men, or there's who was over there? What's the brigade?
It's Grumble
over there?
Jones is going to
Grumble
be there. Wade Hampton's going to be off to the right near the airport where we know the airport
Yes.
to be right now.
Okay. Stuart's staff is picking cherries.
No.
No?
No, that's not them. Those were some soldiers who were from those artillery batteries who
Ah.
were occupying that plateau now, that ridge.
Yes.
You
that's
had
it.
us all befuddled. Where are you going with this?
Yeah,
I
staff
don't want to
thing?
know the staff.
I always because
I knew where he was going.
So this is something
cherries.
that is
The
wrong,
cherries.
though, in the narrative. Then, because the source I had it as his staff.
No.
So it was not his staff.
No.
It was just some soldiers that were in the
You
artillery.
know, I like to give multiple choice on my tour.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's true.
So,
That's actually a good
so,
point.
yeah,
Yes.
so you can
It could-
say staff. It can
you
be a
could-
multiple choice thing.
but it's not correct.
Well, I
Well,
mean,
maybe.
it could be.
Could be.
It could
Maybe
be.
some of his staff members were
Are you
up there
telling me
with them.
none of them climbed the tree?
That's
Maybe-
a good
maybe
point.
Not. Maybe
are
not.
you telling me that Stuart's men who love
I
these
don't-
type of
look,
things
yeah,
are
they
going
love
to go and
cherries.
do this? I
If
mean,
you're
come
just
on.
trying to make me feel better about being wrong, don't bother.
We mostly would,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
don't,
yeah.
don't do that. I know nothing about this battle here, so I'm having a hard time trying to lead you on here. So bear with me. Okay, so go ahead, pick it up from there. Stuart is over there at St. James Church, and then what happens?
Go ahead.
All right.
Mike,
Well,
you love this story.
I love this story so much. Okay, so what happened is that artillery line, those 16 cannons, are going to fall back to that ridge. And it's a perfect ridge for it, too, if you're trying to get somewhere in a hurry. I think probably their preference would have been to try to get back to Fleetwood, but time was of the essence. And if you're looking at the St. James Church area, that's a perfect place to put it, because the artillery will cover that open field to the tree line, as well as the Beverly Ford Road and the Green Mill Road. So it gives that nice coverage you want as an artillery kind of position. But what happens is there's some cherry trees kind of lining the road, and some men are going up there and picking cherries and sending them down to the artillerists down below. Eventually, Union artillery is going to come in, set up, and start throwing shells into the Confederate artillery position. Well, these men up in the trees are going to discover that preservation, not just of battlefield, but of life is a good idea. So they're going to start scrambling out of the trees as quickly as they possibly can. And they're going to hit the ground. And Stuart is going to be watching all of this, and he's going to laugh. And he's going to say, "What, are those cherries too sour for you?"
Yeah, what's the matter, boys?
What's the
Cherries
matter?
getting
Just-
sour?
Yeah, something
Yeah,
of that nature.
yeah. So there's always a little bit of levity even in the middle of a battle.
Well,
I
that's the
guess.
thing about Stuart. Stuart's interesting character. He's really, really happy in really bad situations.
Yeah, he
It's
sounds like an asshole.
just kind of that boyish, bouncy.
Yeah, I was going to say, sounds like a frat boy to me.
Yeah.
You know,
wanna have
everything's
some fun,
a party.
Matt, join the cavalry.
Yeah, I got. Well, maybe
You
that's.
want to be a bully boy.
Yeah,
You want to be a bully boy, Matt.
join the cavalry.
Where's your mules?
Yeah, I think Eric is home recording a version of that, isn't he?
Yes. Oh, it's his
musically.
favorite song.
Yeah,
Of all the Civil War songs, "Join the Cavalry" is his
Yes,
favorite.
that's right.
Yeah.
I think he has it on.
He plays it on a loop in his house.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
In
and-
fact, his doorbell.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, I think when you ring his doorbell,
Yeah.
right? Doesn't it?
Well, and he has, his Jeep Wrangler. Instead of Dixie, like the Dukes of Hazzard, he actually has "Join the Cavalry" as
Man.
his horn. So
Yeah, nobody loves the cavalry more.
No, but see, and that's the thing is he acts like he hates them, but it's really
We know
just to
the
throw
truth.
us off the scent.
We know the
he
truth.
loves the cavalry.
So, I mean, we've covered Stuart and what he's doing. He's going to the scene of the action.
Yes, thank you for bringing it back.
My
to
question is this.
Somebody's got to be the adult in
Yeah,
the room.
please. Mike's in charge.
My question is this, and this is something I've been trying to figure out myself, is where's Alfred Pleasonton?
Yeah.
Isn't he supposed to be in charge of this thing?
Well, that's
Well,
a great
he-
question.
What was he
He
doing?
will eventually move forward and occupy the G House.
Okay.
That will be his headquarters. Throughout his time here.
The G House is actually in this artillery line.
At the moment.
Right,
At the
right.
moment.
At the point we're at, it's
Yeah.
there.
So
okay.
that's one thing I'm trying to point out here is it seems like Buford is stage managing this side of the fight.
Oh, there's no question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
not-
is his responsibility as
Yeah.
the division
Right.
commander.
Right.
Yeah.
And there is going to be fighting over on that side that's going to start to take place because Confederate General Rooney Lee has moved into his position. He has some of his men along a stone wall on the Cunningham farm, which you were able to see that view
Yep.
today from Buford's
Yep.
Knoll, as well as a prominent knoll farther to the, would that be kind of northeast? Maybe no, it'd be west. Of that stone wall.
Okay.
So Rooney Lee's line is pretty formidable, and now Buford's got to deal with this.
Yeah.
Right.
Meanwhile,
Back at the
Back
ranch.
at the
back
ranch.
at the church, the Union troops are coming out of those trees
Yeah.
that you alluded to and across that open field, headlong into that gun line. And it's going to be the 6th Pennsylvania supported by the 6th U.S., and they are going to come crashing right up towards those guns. Coming out of the Confederate line in support of those guns, somewhere down around the church, probably, is going to be none other than the 35th Virginia Battalion, the Whites Comanches.
Yes.
Yeah. And they are going to come out in front of their own guns and turn to the right to hit these 2 U.S. regiments in the flank.
Mm-hmm.
And as they do, the Confederate guns continue to fire. So they are receiving friendly fire. A canister or a projectile in the air is indiscriminate with who it hits.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't know you're on the same side.
That's right.
It was the South Carolina battery that said that they hit friend and foe alike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what that's because the Whites Comanches ran across the front of the guns?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But the guns are focusing on the Yankees coming at them.
That's right.
Absolutely,
Right.
because
That's
there's
right.
nothing in front of the guns,
Right.
nothing supporting in front of them.
And the Comanches are what, 200 strong?
Fewer than.
Fewer than 200, and they lose 90 men
They lose 90 in the battle,
in the battle.
but they had to have lost many of them there.
There, yeah, like a good chunk
They're
of them.
going to have a pretty significant role here then on Fleetwood a little later in the day.
Right. And the total strength of the battalion is 200, right? Like not just in that action, but like all White has under his command to grab
Fewer
from
than
is those
200.
fewer than 200
fewer
men.
than 200.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Just
Yeah,
wanted to make
yeah.
sure.
So, but that's going to be enough to stop the 6s, the 6th PA and the 6th US. That's going
Right.
to be enough combined with the artillery.
Okay.
And that will deaden that. That's a poor choice
Right.
of words. That will stop muffle
Blunt the
that will-
attack.
Yeah,
Yeah, that will blunt that attack.
blunt, that's the
Yeah.
word, yeah.
Yeah, and during this firing, one of those guns runs out of ammunition, one of the Beckham's guns. And so it's going to be sent back here to Fleetwood Hill.
Aha, and that's getting to where I was going
which
earlier.
will be
Yeah.
fortuitous a little bit later on.
Okay, remember that single gun, folks.
That's right.
A howitzer,
Stay
if I'm
tuned,
not
sports
mistaken,
fans.
right? It was a howitzer?
I'd have to look it up.
Okay,
Matt.
it's not a big deal.
You know, I'm a cav guy, not an artillery guy, as you know.
Okay. I'll ask Eric.
And the 6th Pennsylvania is the only volunteer regiment in the Reserve Brigade, Federal Reserve Brigade, which is made up of regulars. And they're Rush's Lancers.
Yes.
Okay. By this time, however, by Chancellorsville, they've ditched their lances. That was kind of
Smart.
a foolish thing to do in the first place. They discovered that very quickly and started discarding them.
Although, you know what, though? If I'm standing there and a unit of cavalry is charging at me with lances as opposed to swords and pistols, I'd be more afraid of the lances. I don't want to be run through with one of those things.
You would think. But the thing's called, cannon, canister, and musket balls.
Yeah.
But anyway, interestingly enough, they kind of earn their bona fides with this, with the rest of their brigade. They get a lot of good reputation for this action because they not only are going to do this charge, and it's going to be, even the Confederates are going to praise the gallantry of this charge. They're going to lose a lot of men doing this. And it's conspicuous gallantry, it's conspicuous bravery. They get to the guns, and even their commander is captured. But that doesn't end their battle. They're going to be continuing on later on in the fight, especially up near Buford's Knoll.
Yeah.
And who was their commander?
Major Robert Morris, the great-grandson of the financier of the American Revolution.
Also the name of my father's best friend since childhood, Robert Morris. Not Major Robert Morris, just Robert Morris.
To quote Tim Smith, cool.
Yeah, who cares? Bullshit. All right, so where do we go from there?
Well, it's around 10:30 at this point, and Stuart, of course, has been getting these reports now of the Union Army showing up at Fleetwood. McClellan sending messages, to him, and the enemy's at Fleetwood, and they're hearing the sound of a gun, not the sound of guns, but the sound of a gun.
A gun.
And that artillery piece that has made its way back here, it is replenished, and as they look out from Fleetwood Hill, they see now some of David Gregg's men who have shown up here at Fleetwood Hill, at the base of Fleetwood Hill, more or less in kind of a semicircle, right? You have Percy Wyndham's men and Justin Kilpatrick's men. And Percy Wyndham, first to show up down there, he's going to get ready to attack Fleetwood Hill. And this gun starts firing at them. But, as we sit on Fleetwood Hill, where we're sitting, if you look over the hill, you cannot see Percy Wyndham, which means he cannot see what's back here. And this gun starts firing, but Wyndham doesn't know it's just a single gun.
Right.
Yeah. So, Tracy, you want to pick up from there as far as Wyndham's attack?
Wyndham will, as Chris alluded to, you don't know what's here, so you don't want to be too aggressive until you... Intelligence hasn't gotten them anywhere so far today.
Yeah, right.
Right? So what Wyndham does is he pauses his attack of the cavalry, and he calls up 3 guns of Martin's battery.
Okay.
And they plant them down... What do you say that is? A quarter mile down there?
I'd give it a half a mile.
Half a mile down towards between Fleetwood Hill, where we are, and essentially Brandy Station.
Okay.
And they begin to return fire with those cannons, trying to, if anything, develop the enemy, see who's up here.
Right, okay. Now, those guns, you said Martin's guns?
Uh-huh.
Are they New York guns?
Ooh, who's Martin?
I want to say it's New York.
I want to say New York, huh?
That's what I want to say. Do you know, Mike?
Yeah, I think they're New York.
Well, Mike thinks they're New York too.
Yeah, let's see.
Everybody's looking.
We're
Stay tuned.
I don't know. For all I know, they could be Elon Musk's.
No. It's 6th Battery, New York Light Artillery.
6 New York.
Yeah, 6 New York.
There you go.
Booyah. That's the only thing I know about this battle.
Nailed it.
All right, and so there. What do they find?
One thing that we we didn't close the loop on is when that gun is set to firing. Who's commanding up here? None other than
McClellan, isn't
Henry
it?
B. McClellan.
Yeah, McClellan,
Yeah, the guy that's on here,
Yeah,
on Fleetwood Hill at the time. And so, here's a staff officer of Stuart, starting to set up against, a brigade.
And the crew of the gun is here with him. It's not just McClellan trying to do.
No. He's not trying to do it all.
Okay. So he's
not
in
yet
charge.
anyway.
Yes.
Not yet.
Not yet.
No.
In the movie, he will be.
Yeah.
Of course,
Yes,
of course.
yes, absolutely.
That's a better scene in the movie.
Yeah.
All right, so go ahead,
Go ahead,
move us
Tracy.
along.
So eventually, Wyndham will begin to attack, and he has in his brigade 3 regiments: 1st PA, 1st Maryland, 1st New Jersey, and they will begin to attack up the hill in the face of who knows what at this point.
Right.
And as they do, remember the remnants of the 35th Whites Comanches.
Right.
They will be called over here. And as they make that loop over here, the remnants of them, again, starting the battle with fewer than 200.
Right.
We don't know how many they lost to friendly fire in that saber clash over there
Right.
at St. James, and now how many are here. But they're really going to hit New Jersey in the face as they come over this ridgeline and stymie that attack of Wyndham's.
The 1st New Jersey has how many?
Oh, I don't...
Roughly. I mean, it's more than under 200 men, right?
I would think so.
I mean, they'd
Do you
have
have
to.
a, you have
Yeah.
an order of
It's
battle
more.
there, Chris?
I mean, so what astonishes me is that, less than 200 men.
234 men.
234.
Okay, so it's not that much bigger then.
Although we do show engaged 199 men. So
Okay, so it's all right. So
yeah,
it's
so it's 200. One
Right.
less than 200.
And if they're already focusing on one thing and you hit them from the flank or the rear or something, then you've got surprise on them, and
You have surprise.
yeah, so it's easier to disperse them. Okay,
No.
okay. And well, does Wyndham's attack succeed ultimately?
No.
No.
No, it
Okay.
won't. He will be turned back, but he was coming into Fleetwood Hill from the west,
Right.
and there will be a new game in town, Judson Kilpatrick. Mike, do you want to...
Probably I'm not the one to take Kilpatrick.
No, for your disparaging remarks earlier, you're now going to give him some
sit
praise.
this way? You're benched.
Well, Hugh Judson Kilpatrick's coming in from the south, this direction. Yeah. And essentially, he's not coming the same way that Wyndham's coming. He's hitting him from a different direction. He's going to push 2 New York regiments forward first, and it's kind of a piecemeal situation, and they're going to get engaged up here as well. Fleetwood Hill becomes, I love this term by one of the combatants, a very promiscuous fight. Okay? It's a melee. It's charge and countercharge as more men are being fed towards this area from those directions. And eventually, while Kilpatrick is pushing his New Yorkers come up, he's going to eventually discover that doesn't work out so well. So he's going to turn to probably one of the finest cavalry commands in the Army of the Potomac, the 1st Maine, and Colonel Doughty. And he's going to ask the commander of Colonel Doughty, what can you do? And Doughty is going to respond, we can drive the rebels, sir. Kilpatrick will say, then do it. Doughty will sabers out his men and charge across. Crash through the Fleetwood Hill position. Successful. Clear the top of Fleetwood Hill here.
Right.
But then they keep going. And we're getting some
shot at.
real-time sound effects
Yeah.
here, everybody. And they're going to keep cruising on over Fleetwood Hill. They don't stop to dismount or to hold it. They just keep going. And does anyone want to cover what happens next?
Well, yeah. The other thing that we need to remember is by now, a lot of the troops, from Jones and from Wade Hampton, have made their way back here. So, this isn't an easy push through here.
No.
When
Reinforcements have
Wyndham
arrived.
attacks,
then.
there's additional troops that are here. So
Right.
the fight has grown on Fleetwood Hill over the course of, I'd say, maybe an hour and a half or so throughout this fight. So when the first main comes through, they're going to end up having to go around the house that was here at Fleetwood at the time. And one of the Confederates wrote later on in a charge that broke us all to pieces. So heavy fighting up here on the hill, and the Maine boys aren't done. They're going all the way to Richmond, sir, all the way to Richmond. To quote some other Mainers in the movie.
Quoting that movie constantly today.
I have to, Matt, because I know it's the only way that you understand the Battle of Gettysburg.
It is, because it's not sports analogies.
No. Certainly sports analogies would not work for
right
it.
over my head.
But in all seriousness, I mean, they are busting through, and it turns out that they're heading towards a home that Bud told us about, with the history of the home known as Beauregard. And as they're heading towards the home, the Mainers do not realize that none other than Robert E. Lee and Richard Ewell and others are in the home.
Yeah.
And they're heading straight for it.
Yeah.
And, it might have been a little excitement there had they realized that he was in the house and maybe captured him. That might have been a checkmate kind of situation.
That could have been an exciting moment in the war for sure.
Yeah, but instead they're going to turn and make their way back to the Union line.
So going back to when McClellan says to Stuart, "Hey, there's Yanks over at Brandy," does Stuart then kind of start realizing something's up? Like, does he start taking it seriously?
We don't know if he'd ever admit that, but certainly he is actually going to come back here and start ordering Jones and Hampton back, and this is pretty serious stuff right in front of the boss.
Right.
And the reason he's able to get Jones and Hampton here is because Buford's attacks against the St. James line have now stopped and moved off to where he is, coming down off of Buford's Knoll.
The Cunningham farm.
Yep. So now that frees up Jones and Hampton to come to the aid here.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
And Stuart's going to be very quick in ordering those two brigades this direction.
Once he realizes Buford is stalled.
So now Buford's men will be facing off against Rooney Lee.
Okay. Right. Okay, because Lee's coming over
from U Ridge.
And so now they got to
stone wall we mentioned earlier.
Yes, okay.
And Buford will launch attacks over there down that slope towards the stone wall. And eventually, this is really about the only place that the infantry is really going to be engaged to any significant amount. 3rd Wisconsin and who else was it?
Second
Massachusetts.
2nd Mass and the 3rd Wisconsin are going to make their way kind of to the flank of that stone wall where there's a bend in it. And they are going to, as Bud alluded to this morning, they're going to actually low crawl with their muskets.
Yeah, that's cool.
Right?
I'd never heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, once they were in position and they have a much greater firepower and range with those muskets, they're going to come on the flank and begin to enfilade the Confederates behind that stone wall and surprise, hey, guess what? And those Confederates then will begin to move backwards. They're going to begin to move back towards U Ridge, and Buford will try to follow up with that. And that actually becomes another battle in and of itself up there, with Rooney Lee falling back towards Farley, which is the Welford House, and Buford making it to that point. And if you're not familiar with Farley or the Welford House, if you Google the 6th Corps winter encampment, that's where John Sedgwick's winter encampment was.
Okay.
So there's a number of photos of him and his staff taken on the front porch of that home, that stately home.
All right.
A fine Connecticut nutmegger, if I may say so.
But Buford gets back that far.
Yeah.
And, you know, he can hear undoubtedly the clash coming on right here at Fleetwood, but he's never able to connect
with them, yeah.
The object of this whole game was connect these two wings, and they can't do it.
Right, okay. So And is it because of everything happening here on Fleetwood? Is Fleetwood kind of like the stopgap between the two?
Well, keep in mind, Fleetwood is not just where we are. It's about a 2.5 mile ridge. And Buford's clear up at the other end of it now.
Okay.
And that's where Rooney Lee is able to hold him off. So
with Greg and his men over into the area and concentrating around here, does the battle get bigger once they get here, or is it kind of tapering off?
Well, the battle has gotten bigger because of the addition of those two brigades. But there's still, instead of where's Waldo, it's where in the world is Alfred Duffier.
Right.
Who is ordered by Greg to come over here and doesn't move. And there's some fighting that takes place out towards Stevensburg. The Confederates that have gone over there to help out. They're way outnumbered. But the Union boys, I guess, don't figure that out. And there's excellent work done by Pennington, with his battery, similar to East Cavalry Field. He does excellent work here against the Confederate line and the fighting that takes place over there in Stevensburg. But, a large amount of troops were shifted over here to Fleetwood Hill with Percy Wyndham and Justin Kilpatrick. And that's probably the crescendo of the battle here is on Fleetwood Hill, but there's still that fighting that takes place with Rooney Lee just west of us.
And that's where Rooney Lee gets wounded.
And that's where he gets wounded in the thigh.
It takes him out of the Gettysburg campaign.
Yep.
All right, so let me throw out a couple of names at you that we know from Gettysburg or whatever, or just a couple of random questions. Is that all right? I know we're not done. We're not done yet, right? You didn't end the battle. Okay.
No,
but I got a couple of questions. Wesley Merritt.
Wesley Merritt is actually involved in that fight with as Buford is pushing forward towards Rooney Lee. And, in fact, at one point in time has a little scrap with Rooney Lee, who is, I think, as Bud told us earlier, one of his men referred to him as a very large enterprise, Rooney Lee on his horse. His horse was massive. He was massive. Horse's name was Frantic, I think, is what Bud told us.
Yes.
And Wesley Merritt, probably thinks the better of this as Rooney Lee is swinging his sword at him. And he's lost a good hat. And, you never want to lose a good hat, as you know.
But he lost the good hat because of Rooney Lee's saber swipe.
Swinging at him.
Yeah. He almost got him in the head.
He almost lost a good head. Luckily he survives that sweeping arc of Rooney Lee's saber.
But this isn't where Rooney Lee gets wounded.
This is not where he gets wounded. At that time. But Wesley Merritt thought the better of that, and so he's involved in the fight here. Yeah.
And he's a captain?
Captain Wesley Merritt.
Captain?
In charge of the 2nd U.S.
But he's in charge of the whole regiment, 2nd U.S.
Yeah.
Is that uncommon to see a captain in charge
In
of
the regulars? No, that's not uncommon.
In the Army at all?
No. Because you have majors commanding infantry regiments. You have captains commanding infantry regiments.
Right.
In the regulars. So it's not unusual.
Yeah, okay.
It would be unusual in artillery.
Right.
Those are all lieutenants.
Right, okay. Fair enough. How about Custer? Is Custer around?
George Custer is here. Do you want to take that one, Mike?
Yeah, well, Custer's depends on who you read and what you read.
I'm going to let you take him as long as you don't disparage him.
No, I'm not disparaging
Yeah,
at all.
Mike.
All right. Yeah, Mike.
Custer is he's a staff officer for Pleasonton. So he's all over the place on the Beverly Ford Road side of things. At one point, the one I'd like to point out is when the 3rd Wisconsin does their little crawl. Before they do their crawl up to the wall, they get approached by a young junior officer who wants to go along with them. A curly-haired junior officer. That's Custer. And so he doesn't command soldiers here, but he is on Pleasonton's staff, so he is here. Coming over with him as well, and this is not a Gettysburg connection, but Ulrich Dahlgren is also coming over the ford with Custer. And they'll both be kind of wandering around, and depending on what account you read, Dahlgren's going to try to rally the 8th New York or whatever. And so But Custer, he's here, but he's not leading any charges. This is before he yells, "Come on, you Wolverines!"
Okay. All right.
There's a couple of other staff officers whose names you'll recognize. One is O'Keefe, who's on Buford's staff, as well as Miles Keogh.
Miles Keogh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miles Keogh, of course. Everybody knows him.
Gotta love Miles.
Gotta love Miles.
And so he's on Buford's staff here.
For those of you in the audience who are saying, "Oh, I don't know who Miles Keogh is," he died with Custer at the Little Bighorn, and he was also on Buford's staff. Strikingly handsome young man, though, right?
Absolutely.
Must have been a lady killer. A lot of people
Absolutely.
say I look like him. All right, next question.
Yeah, I've not seen the resemblance yet, but maybe I'm just looking at the
Well,
wrong
it's because I
angle.
shaved my head. He didn't shave his.
Is that what
yeah,
it is?
it's just the hair.
Yeah, maybe if you give us a good rousing, Irish song, we'll
Wait
see.
till you see me in a uniform standing with a stiff back.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
there you go.
I'll show you.
That's awesome.
Okay.
look forward
Anyone else though from Gettysburg? Go ahead, Mikey.
All right, there's one. The guy who ultimately takes over the 8th Illinois. Captain Elon J. Farnsworth.
Farnsworth
is going to take over the 8th Illinois after George Forsyth, who becomes chief of staff to Phil Sheridan. After he's wounded, then Farnsworth becomes commander of the 8th Illinois Cavalry.
as captain.
As captain.
Yes. Now, okay. That's enough for now on that. Let's get back to the battle and let's wrap it up. Let's finish the battle.
Okay, battle's over.
Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, tune in next time when we hear Matt say.
I can't believe there's a tree there. All right, go ahead, Chris. Let's wrap it up.
Well, once Fleetwood Hill, the fighting's over, the Stuart maintains possession, if you will, of Fleetwood Hill. He's had this more or less surprise in front of the boss. The boss is over here at Beauregard, kind of watching him, and he's done the reviews, the grand reviews. Probably one of the best days in his military career as he gets to show off, and then the next day he probably has one of his worst days.
Exactly.
Which is how things go sometimes.
Where did he have the reviews? Do we know exactly?
Yep, we do.
Yes.
They're on a farm here in Culpeper that is named Auburn, which at the time is owned by John Minor Botts. Yep, it's a few miles this way.
Got it. All right.
Yep, and the part of the grand review where the grandstand was is now taken over by an entrance and exit to Route 29. Yep, so it's
Can't win 'em all.
somewhat lost, but Auburn is still it's in private hands. Beautiful farm today.
Was that not where Robert Beckham was born? Was it not? Was that not his boyhood home?
I don't think so. I think Beckham was born on a different farm. But
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to look that one up for you, Tracy.
Okay.
And then he went on to play soccer.
John. Yeah, that's where. Yeah, he was in Culpeper.
Please, like Elon Musk was better, Joe. I don't want to hear it.
You went with a sports reference and you
He
went with
tries a
that one?
sports reference.
And he pulled it out of nowhere, folks. All of a sudden we're talking soccer, for God's sakes. Yeah. It was the Culpeper Youth Soccer Organization gathered on the farm of Auburn.
Listen, that's the beauty of this country, that a complete moron like myself could start a podcast just because I was willing to do it. You don't have to have qualifications
Matt,
for
I
anything.
can honestly tell you that with that statement, you've probably shown yourself smarter than many of people that have gone through grade school history. So,
Wait, which? The Beckham statement or the podcast statement?
yes.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you so much.
So with the battle,
Yes.
Yes, back
Back
to the battle.
I guess I'll let Tracy end it because I got to
Go
catch
ahead,
my
Trace.
breath.
Yeah.
So this battle, start to finish, is somewhere close to 14 hours long.
Okay.
And we're going to have nearly 21,000 combatants here, about 11,000 Union troops and 9,500, 10,000 Confederate troops. And it's going to be the largest cavalry engagement of the Civil War. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be about just over, I think, 900 Union casualties and in excess of 500 Confederate casualties. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't include the number of horses.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is over quite a large area. You know,
Yeah.
it's not just here where we are in Fleetwood. There's certainly tremendous loss of life and suffering here, but this is everywhere that we've visited this morning, and everywhere that we've talked about in this podcast. And when the Union troops finally do withdraw, Alfred Pleasonton has made his temporary headquarters when he does reach the field at the G House there along the St. James Church line, which incidentally was also a Union hospital.
Okay.
But they do begin to withdraw. That leaves the Confederates in command of the field. And they are certainly the ones then that have the task of burying the dead. And it is a matter of burying them where they are found.
Yeah,
Friend
Judge
and
Stuart
foe.
says in his official report, I believe, we buried them friend and foe alike,
Right.
side by side,
Yeah.
where they fell.
And was that some kind of symbolic gesture, or was it just laziness?
You know, the Gettysburg campaign is still getting underway,
Yeah.
so I don't know that they have a lot of time to sort them out. And, you know, usually the victor of these fields is the one responsible for the burial.
Right. So you just
So,
decide and do
yeah.
it with
Yep.
the best
Get
way
it
for
done.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do it the
yeah.
best way possible. So,
It's a deed no one wants to do, but it has to be done.
Sure. Now, so would you say about 1,300 casualties?
Yeah.
About
Somewhere
give or take
around there.
1,400.
1,400?
Yeah.
So according to Eric or Tim Smith, that means this was really nothing because there's, out of 21,000, only 1,400. That's what they like to say to discredit
It's
the
nothing
cavalry.
unless you're one of those guys.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm
exactly.
saying.
Thank
People
you.
died here. I mean, that's the thing.
That's what I say to Tim and Eric. They're always picking on the poor cavalry like they didn't matter. Cavalry, yellow lives matter.
I see a new bumper sticker coming on your car here.
No.
The mail.
Let's not touch that. Let's just
What happened?
keep crawling.
Oh.
crawling on.
But Matt,
Oh,
I think
'cause it's-
it's very important to understand that this battle, that was really ended up being a surprise for both sides, didn't really change the events that are about to unfold.
Right. Right. So what does come out of it, though? So Hooker orders this. He wants to break up whatever the heck they're doing. Does he want to get any kind of intelligence, or
Well, according to Alfred Pleasonton, that job was done. It was always intended to be a reconnaissance,
Right.
and he found out what he needed to find out.
okay? And what did he find out?
Well, he found out that the Confederates were here.
Yeah, also, Alfred Pleasonton will write in dispatches afterwards about the Brandy Station engagement that I prevented the raid from going into Maryland and Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
Did he really say that?
He does believe or try to make people believe that he captured the plan and, captured all of Stuart's stuff on Fleetwood Hill. None of that happened.
No.
But,
So
I mean, if we want to kind of think about the campaign a little bit, June 9th was the start of the campaign, or supposed to be.
Yeah.
And the Federals delay it by at least a day with regards to Stuart. And so, let's say they don't have this fight here. Let's say the Union doesn't try to figure out where the Confederate cavalry is and disperse them, and things go according to plan with Robert E. Lee. That brings probably Jeb Stuart on the way up to Gettysburg versus the fight here, the fight at Aldie, Middleburg, and Upperville. Would they have happened? Don't know. Maybe
Right.
they would have. Maybe they wouldn't have. And then eventually Stuart's ride. Would that have happened?
Right.
Because you got to think by the end of June 9th, that Stuart's feeling
Stuart's
a little
stinging.
bad.
Yeah.
My pride's hurt. I had the chance to, really start this off well in my new larger command.
Right.
And
I blew it.
I was surprised.
And that's before he even reads what the papers say about
Right.
him.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I mean, you
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
if you try to think psychologically and not as these people as little boxes on a map or something, this is a guy who clearly is a bit of a peacock. Is proud of himself, self-assured, and all that stuff. And he gets surprised, and then the papers starts saying stuff about him. That's got to sting, and maybe that explains his ride. Maybe that explains the rest of his behavior, and that he's trying to redeem himself.
I think it does come into the equation psychologically.
Yeah.
And, but from the Confederates' perspective, I think there's more than one account that essentially states that, the Union Union cavalry has now come of age. Their mettle was able to meet ours.
Yeah.
And that's different than anything that's happened so far in the war.
Yeah. That's a big bolster to the Union cavalry. They can now stand toe-to-toe or hoof-to-hoof, if you will, with the Confederate cavalry.
Yeah. Well, can you make another sports reference with that?
Along the
tee to green.
I was going to say. I was thinking of a gridiron thing to say. So, real quick, hold on to that, Mike, because I got a question here. Now, so we got Lee and Ewell over there at Beauregard, which is not too far from Fleetwood Hill, watching all this stuff.
Right.
Ewell's corps is already on the move, correct? And how far away are they?
Well, they're just north of Culpeper.
Yeah, they're
and it's not just them.
They're not,
Longstreet is there too.
Sure, they're not in the valley yet, though. They're heading into the valley.
But
they're in the county.
If you look
down the road.
beyond Joe,
yes,
from where we're sitting, you see that there's a high tree line. You can just see it in a little V of the trees.
Yes, I can.
Okay, that is Pony Mountain.
Okay,
that is the location of James Longstreet's corps.
Oh, right. Okay, so a good distance away.
Yeah. Tracy's holding up the microphone.
Tracy's holding the microphone so people can hear it.
Yep.
All right, so that's a good. What was that, like 15 miles away?
Oh,
How far do you think that is?
That far.
That.
Yeah, maybe
miles?
5.
It's an easy day's march.
Now, something
5 miles.
else. How far
Very bad
away
at that.
is Hood's division?
Because Hood's division was here for
Right,
that
for the
grand
review.
on
Here
June
for the
8th.
Grand
Right.
Review.
Yeah.
So they're not too far away.
Not
He
too
was
far away.
invited to bring his friends to the Grand Review.
And, of course, they were very complimentary of the cavalry, as infantry tends to be.
So
I
they are
don't
close
think so.
by if needed.
Yeah.
But they didn't reveal themselves. So there's a piece of recon or intelligence that the Union
Did
might
not get.
have had they been engaged.
Right. So I just wanted to bring that up, though, about where everybody is, because this isn't an isolated thing. There's a reason they're out here. There's a reason Stuart is going to cross the river on the 9th, or where he's got stuff to do, and it's to screen the movement of the main body of the army, which is not very far away from us.
Yeah.
And that's why Ewell is able to be here with Lee.
And we pointed out, as far as the trees and things like, they're just to the west of where we're at right now. So they're getting poised to move north.
So they're not fully on the move yet. They're ready to.
But we still have A.P. Hill's corps holding things down
In
opposite
Fredericksburg.
The army in effigy.
Yes, yes.
Marching to make it seem like it's larger. But, you think about this now. If Buford and Gregg are put into the positions that they're put in, but the order's not given to cross and disperse, just kind of get out there and watch, and Stuart starts crossing Beverly Ford the next day, do you still have a cavalry fight there?
Right. Right.
I mean, there's a lot of what ifs here. If you like your what ifs.
Oh yeah.
And also, Pleasonton sends back that dispatch at 12:30, referencing the 5th Corps. Right, 5th Corps is nearby. Well, near-ish by. So this thing could have spun out of control pretty quickly.
Yeah. And what if
Sure.
Jackson were here?
Yeah, I know.
God,
But-
here we go.
but-
Yes, what we need is old blue light.
I think one of the major consequences of the battle is summed up by Henry Brainerd McClellan himself. He said that Brandy Station made the Union cavalry. Now, while I don't entirely agree with him on that, I think the Gettysburg campaign as a whole
I agree with
does.
that. Yes.
And Brandy Station is the beginning of that.
Yeah.
And it gives these men confidence that they can go toe-to-toe, hoof-to-hoof with their Confederate counterparts. That's Brandy Station's
Yeah.
impact.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, and the leadership, of course, of John Buford in particular.
Yes.
I think Ed Longacre just wrote an updated book on David Gregg, to examine his leadership. But the leadership here of John Buford, should not be any surprise to Gettysburg students and aficionados.
No.
And he does as good a job here as I think anybody could.
Yeah, and he's stage managing a fight involving infantry, cavalry, and artillery.
Yeah.
and he's giving Stuart all Stuart can handle
Yeah, yeah,
for the better part of hours.
yeah.
Okay, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So, on the 10th, what's going on with the armies? Does Stuart lick his wounds and move on, or how does this all?
Well, Lee is beginning to move north. They're starting to cross the rivers, and they are heading northward,
Okay.
ultimately to that clash at Gettysburg 3 weeks later.
All right. How about the belligerents in this fight here? How
Well,
are they?
A week later, Stuart will end up fighting the Battle of Aldie.
Right.
2 days later, the Battle of Middleburg. 2 days later, the Battle of Upperville, as he's trying to prevent the Union Army from essentially being able to see on the other side of the mountains.
So after this,
they're going to move and screen,
Right.
which is what their original command is,
Yeah.
right? Their original orders. They're going to do that and do it very successfully, as Alfred Pleasonton keeps probing to try to figure out how he can see on the other side of those mountains to see what Lee's doing.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So
They're not going to be able to do it.
Is it that after Brandy Station and when the infantry gets into the valley, then Stuart's job is to fall back to the passes of the valley and cover them? Is that basically what he's
The passes and the road networks to get
Yes.
there.
to get to them?
Yes.
Okay.
And if you drive up from here to get to the valley, to go up to Ashby's Gap, you're going to go near the area of Aldie, Upperville, and Middleburg.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's what's happening. That road existed. And so what you have is he's covering those road networks as well as those gaps, doing his job and doing it quite well.
Yeah. Is that how you go home?
Yeah, that's how I go
Okay,
home.
I think I'm gonna go that way.
Every single time, that's how I go
Yeah.
home.
I've never done that.
It's some of the most beautiful horse country you'll see.
I know. I love Virginia.
It's God's country, Matt.
It is God's country, God's will. All right. Anything you want to add there, Tracy?
Not necessarily about the battle or campaign, but I think it's important to recognize Clark Bud Hall and the
Yes.
efforts that he has made here, the progress he's made here on this battlefield over the last 30-some years in preventing core battlefield areas to be taken over by commercialization.
Yeah.
What is it, Chris? Upwards of 1,600 acres, something like that?
Oh gosh, I think we're closing in on 2,300.
2,300
yeah, and
acres.
Wow.
Yeah.
the state of Virginia has agreed that, and that may include Cedar Mountain as well.
Okay.
But the core battlefield here at Brandy Station and Cedar Mountain by 2024 will become a Virginia state park. As you know, this is
Right.
not a
This is
national
not,
battlefield.
right.
ABT.
It's ABT owns this property that we've been on today, and so thankfully, the state of Virginia has made a commitment to create a state park here, which should open it up to even more visitors.
Yeah.
And it was one of the things that we were really hoping for when we started the Culpeper Battlefield Tours Company, so that and that all that kind of got started, years ago with I wanted to come down to Brandy Station and see what it was all about, and friends of mine were saying, well, you gotta connect up with Bud Hall, and I was able to do that, and Bud has been a wonderful friend and mentor, for several years now. Just coming, when I come down here. And a group of us, would come down here at times and he'd just show us around. And, the whole story of the winter encampment around Culpeper is fascinating. This battle is fascinating, but there's a whole lot more to Culpeper and its participation in the American Civil War. You got two major rivers,
Right.
that surround it. You got railroads and roads, all accessible during the American Civil War, thus making Culpeper some of the most fought over ground in our American Civil War.
Yeah.
And you just couldn't get a tour here. And so a few years ago, Susan Ralston and her husband Troy came up to Gettysburg. I met with them. I gave them a tour, and they said, how do we get this in Culpeper? And so the Culpeper Battlefield Tours idea was launched. And she and her husband started the company, and we're available for tours for folks if you want to see where this action took place on this pristine battleground. And one other thing I'll say about Bud, man, if you don't think one person can make a difference, I'll put up Bud as an example of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of help from ABT and others that he's met along the way, but it's tireless in his effort to preserve every inch of this ground that we have.
It's amazing the amount of ground that he was able to get, and I love his attitude. With like people that were wanting to develop different areas, and he's just like, never going to happen. It's like, okay,
yeah,
and he was right.
Yep.
And he has fostered and nurtured so many relationships with the private landowners around here,
right?
So he could educate them to the importance of the ground.
Yep.
And now many of those properties are in easement, so they won't be developed either.
I like that style too. Is like you get everybody with you, as opposed to standing outside on a corner screaming with a stupid sign.
Yeah.
Like, do something. He's proactive about it, and he's including the property owners in the importance of their land, and I think that's great. Yeah, I really liked him. He was a really cool guy. I'm going to come down this winter and do that leafless tour.
Yeah.
Because I got to see what this place is like without leaves.
It does make a difference, for sure. So,
right.
If folks want a tour, contact the Culpeper Battlefield
How
Tours.
do they do that?
CulpeperBattlefieldTours.com.
That's a easy
way to do it.
to remember.
Yep.
They're CulpeperBattlefieldTours.com. Yes, very good.
So this has been great. I hope we've opened up the battle. Now more to come as we get into the 160th anniversary, Matt.
Absolutely. Yeah. What maybe we should do the other cavalry battles and Winchester.
I think the 160th ought to be totally focused on cavalry. I think Eric would would really enjoy that, don't you?
Just do. Yep.
Corbett's Charge.
Corbett's Charge,
Yeah, maybe
absolutely.
we should do it.
East Cavalry Field, South Cavalry Field.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's
Eric
do
would think this would be the best anniversary ever if we did that.
He'll quit. He's like, if this has turned into a cavalry show, I'm done. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, definitely if you're ever in the area or if you want to make a special trip to come down here, this is a gorgeous area of Virginia. All of Virginia is beautiful. Culpeper Battlefield Tours, contact them, get a tour. You can get Mike, you can get Tracy or Chris, and there's other guides
Lots
too.
of others.
Great guides.
Yep.
Great
Right.
group.
So there's other ones, but I mean, these guys from the show. Not only now can you get at least two of them to go with you around Gettysburg, but you can also get our beloved 6 questions to take you around Brandy
And is
Station.
it true he will ask visitors 6 questions on every tour?
He's going to ask you 6 questions, and the ones you say I don't know to, well, that's what he's going to answer on the tour.
Yeah, there
it's
you
a
go.
very clever way of doing tours. Yeah. And of course, nobody knows the answers to any of them. So he just gets to basically make up whatever he wants to do the tour about. It's beautiful. Not make it up, but you know what I mean. Anyway, Tracy, thank you. Mike, thank you. Chris, thank you.
Thanks
for arranging this whole thing. Thanks for the idea. And everybody, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. All right. We're done.
Our hearts so stout have got a sting, for soon 'tis known from whence we came. Wherever we go, they dread the name of Gary Owen and glory. Instead, follow, drink down ale, and pay the reckoning on the